Thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk about behaviors. And we aren't going to spend a lot of time on each one, but I want to give you some characteristics that you should watch for and what you should do when you have these different behaviors. First of all, let's talk about the family behavior. Sometimes families are getting along and they do okay, and sometimes they aren't. And what we want to remember about families is that when you see a family member in distress, go up and find out what's wrong and validate their feeling, but don't throw any of the team underneath the bus. For example, say, "Oh, Mrs. Jones, you seemed very upset. What's the matter?" And then find out what the problem is. But then don't say, "Oh, gee, I hear we've lost a lot of clothes in the laundry." We don't want to throw anybody underneath the bus. What you would need to say instead, "Oh, Mrs. Jones, I'm so sorry to hear about that. Can I help you fill out some grievance forms?" Or "Here's some grievance forms. Give me the details." And the next thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that Mrs. Jones is all upset about the clothes that have been lost or whatever the problem is. What we want to do is pull her away from that emotional anxiety and get her to give us factual information about the problem so that we can help solve it. So we want to take her from the emotional frenzy that she's in into being very in a computer mode where she can give us the facts and we can write things down. If I don't have time to write things down for her, I'll ask her to fill the form out and then bring it back to me, and I'll make sure it gets to the right people. So that is very helpful. Validate their feeling, don't throw anybody underneath the bus, and help them get to the facts. The next thing that I want you to know, if the family member is continuing to raise their voice at you, you need to get help. You need to call another staff member over and say, "Hey, Mrs. Jones is very concerned today. Would you mind listening to this with her?" And so that we can make sure that we get it right. Because what happens is we need now to make sure that Mrs. Jones is being reassured that she's going to get help, and that, too, she realizes yelling at us isn't going to help. We need to get the facts. And we also want to make sure that somebody doesn't yell at our staff member because our staff member is important. So that's another thing to remember. So if somebody continues to yell at you, you have a right to say, "Hey, don't yell at me. Let's get you to somebody who can help." Or if you yell at me again, we'll have to ask you to leave if that becomes the path that you need to take because they're out of control. We want to make sure anytime any person, resident or family member, is out of control, we want to help redirect them and calm them down so that we don't have a worse incident to occur. So that's a little bit about family members. Family members sometimes are very sweet and very wonderful, and for the most time they are. Once in a while when they have a problem and they've been frustrated by it, we need to come to their aid. Do not ignore it. Do not walk away from it. Come up and ask them, validate their feeling, start the process. So that's what we need to do with family members that have concerns. What we need to do with it, we want to talk about next, are some of the behaviors that our residents have. So we're going to cover wandering. We're going to cover aggressive behaviors in the way of verbalization, and then physical behaviors. And if we get time, we'll get to the sexual behaviors too. So we want to cover those areas. We're going to cover them just briefly to give you an idea of what they manifest themselves as and what we should be doing about it. So wandering. A person will wander for 3 reasons. One, they're looking for something. They actually have a need that they need, and they have to find it quick. And usually it's the unmet needs. The unmet needs are, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm hot, I'm cold, I need the bathroom, or I'm in pain. It's amazing. When people are having behavior problems, if we look first to find out what the unmet needs are, usually 98% of the time we can solve the behavior problem and change the behavior. So again, the unmet needs are, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm hot, I'm cold, I need the bathroom, I'm in pain. And when we solve those, usually the wandering or the calling out behavior will stop. The next type of wandering is when they're wandering around and they are looking for something that doesn't exist anymore. They're wandering around in their own time warp. So they're looking for the house that they grew up in. Or they're looking in the house that they got when they were before they came into the facility, when they were living with their spouse at home. They're wandering for something that they can't get to or can't find. So they're wandering without a clear intention. And when that happens, we need to stop and talk to them and find out why they're wandering. And then redirect them. Oh, I'm looking for my husband. Oh, I'm sure he was going to come by and pick me up. I need to find John. I need to find my husband. So what we need to do is just validate that feeling. Yes, I know you want to find John. John must have been a wonderful person. Tell me about John. And now she'll start talking about John and not precipitate on why she can't find him. Another one of the reasons that people will wander is because they're an escapist. If they're an escapist, they're really very determined to do this. And so we want to make sure that they are safe at all times and that we will care plan that they will not go into the garden by themselves and attempt to climb over the wall. Or we may say, oh, gee, we need to have only soft shoes on him so he doesn't climb over the wall. Or we need to make sure that lawn furniture can't be put next to the fence and they jump over the fence. So we have to plan for their safety and precautions. So those are the three types of wandering. One is they are wandering with a purpose. They're looking for something. They're wandering without a clear intention. They're looking for something they will not be able to find, and we need to redirect them. And they're escapists, and we need to keep them safe and comfortable. Anytime a person is out in your garden walking around, please make sure that you periodically stop and check with them, have some social conversation, make sure that they're okay, make sure that they're comfortable, that their shoes are comfortable, that they're not getting wet or cold, and that they're not dehydrating. So those are important things that we can do while people are wandering around. And then, of course, we can always invite them back in and say, hey, how about coming in for a while? You must be getting tired, because we certainly don't want them to fall. So that's all I'll say about wandering. And we will move on to people that call out. People that call out, again, probably have a need that they need to have met. So we want to check first and find out what are the unmet needs. And then, of course, we will fix those needs. And if it's not that they're calling out repetitively, or what often will happen is somebody will they're calling out repetitively and they don't realize that we've already solved the problem. So we come back in and we remind them. So that is another type of person, the person that repetitively calls out. Sometimes I have people do that in bingo games, and I make them the repeat caller. And so I'll say, oh, little Miss Irene, why don't you sit here next to me and you can be my repeat caller? Because if I say the number B5, she's going to keep saying B5 too. So I will give her a job, and then I can gently cue her, give her a little tap on the hand and squeeze her hand. Okay, we're done with B5. Now we're going to do O72. Oh, you want to call it out, Irene? O72. O72. Thank you, Irene. That was good. So we're giving her some meaningful work if she chooses to do that by the repetitive calling. Now, sometimes, we just have to tell them, oh, you have your water here. You don't need any more water. Is all this water here confusing you? Here, let's take some of it away. And here, use this big cup. This is your water cup. Now it's a larger item, and she may be able to focus on it, and maybe not. We can't correct all behaviors, but we can help redirect them. Another one when people are calling out is that they call out because we positively reinforce their calling out. They were calling out, and we said, oh, well, we all rush in to take care of something. And what we sometimes need to do is give people a level of expectation that we want them to rise to. And that is because everybody wants to be good. Everybody wants things to go right. So once in a while, people don't know what the expectation is. So what I might do, if somebody is calling out, I'll go into the room, and I might say to them, when you yell so loud, it scares me, and I don't want to be with you. Can you lower your voice? Or I might say to them, if they continue to call out, I'm going to come back when you're not calling out, when you can treat me like a lady and that you don't call out. It scares me when you call out, but I'll be glad to help you when you're not calling out. So what I will do then, I will immediately go out of the room, stand by the door, and I'm going to wait at that door until I hear them lower their voice. or when I hear them not calling out. I want to positively reinforce them. And when they do that, I'm going to come right back in and say, oh, I'm so glad that you're not calling out. I want to help you, and I'm here to help you now that you're not calling. And that's what we need to do. Positively reinforce the activity that we want them, the behavior that we want to see. Now, this takes a little bit of time to get them to realize, to trust us. And sometimes people are never going to do it, but for the most part, if we give them an expectation, we ask them to meet that expectation, they will do their best to try to do it. And if we remind them, oh, remember, we weren't going to call out. You weren't going to call out because it scared me? Can you lower your voice now and I'll stay? If you can, I won't. So we're giving them options to succeed, options to have that positive reinforcement, that positive good feeling. So that's another thing you do with calling out. One thing that I want you to remember, when people do call out, and if we don't break that pattern, sometimes that calling out will frustrate and build up, and then sure as shooting, it may escalate to actually the next time a person comes in the room, they might get hit or get something thrown at them. So when people are calling out, we want to positively reinforce them, give them an expectation to rise to, and then solve the problem. And then, of course, if they're just repetitively calling out, we can't always help that, but we can tactically touch them and cue them and ask them to lower their voice or not to call out. So try those techniques. It sometimes help. One other technique that you can do is called pacing. And when somebody's calling out because they're angry, and what we want to do is raise our voice up to their level of sound. And before we finish our sentence, we're going to bring our voice down. So here's an example. Oh, I see you're very upset and that is bothering me a great deal. How may I help you? Sometimes when we raise our voice and catch their voice, as we lower ours, theirs will also come down. Usually by the second time you've done this, that'll help. Another thing that you can do is use you need statements. So I might say to a person who is doing a different behavior or something that I don't want them to do, or they're calling out, you need to lower your voice so I can hear you clearly. Or you need to put your feet on the floor so we can dance together. Or you need to put your feet on the floor so you don't fall. You need to stop calling out so that I can help you. So once we say you need, the brain automatically stops for a second and says, what do I need? And that gives us a chance to plant the seed of what we want them to do. You need to stop calling out so I can help you. And then we have a fair chance at trying to redirect them. So that's all I will say about verbally disruptive behavior. Just very important, though, I want to make sure that you understand when we let calling out continue for extended time, it agitates them, it increases them. If we don't redirect them or try to bring them down, they probably will lash out at us, or they'll hit somebody on the next shift or the next person that comes in the room. So we want to make sure that we do a good job of that. For people that are physically aggressive, we need to do a couple of things to protect them and protect ourselves. First of all, we need to stop the hitting if they're hitting another resident or attempting to hit us. And then we need to find out, do they have any unmet needs? During this whole process, you need to keep calm and have a pleasant facial expression, and make sure that you are not using aggressive hand movements. Use open hand movements so that they know that you're not being angry, that you are calm, and that we want them to be calm. So that's another thing that you need to remember that's pretty darn important. So we want to make sure that they don't get to that point. When we are not sure if somebody's going to have a physical disruption, the best way that we can figure this out is watch their baseline behavior. If they were walking around pleasantly and all of a sudden now they're starting to shuffle around, or their facial expressions exchange, and when it's happy and, oh, hi honey, and hi there, how are you? And if they change to, baby, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Mama, what's wrong? If they have a change of tone, if they have a change of pentameter, we know that now something is agitating them, and we really need to reach out and help them before they get so frustrated that they'll swing out. So watch their baseline behavior. If they go from a happy walk to a shuffle, if they change the tone of their voice or the type of words that they use, or the anxiety in their face, these are all signals that something is bothering them, and we need to stay calm. We need to figure out what the unmet needs are and try to redirect them and find out how we can help them before they become physically aggressive. There are times when people well, I think we'll stop there today. We've talked enough about this subject, and I just want you to remember, watch a person's baseline, watch how they talk, make sure that we don't allow them to continue to verbally be disruptive, because that will lead to a physical problem, a physical encounter probably. We want to make sure that if a person is wandering around, that they are wandering around either for a purpose or for an intention that they can't clearly define, or they're an escapist, and we want to make sure that whenever a person is wandering around that they're comfortable. We want to make sure that we empathize with people, whether it's a resident or the family member, but never blame the rest of the staff. Just figure out, empathize with them, and figure out, validate their feeling. I see you're upset. How can I help you? Or when they tell you what the problem is, say, that's very interesting. Let me see how I can help you. All those things will help to avoid other behavior problems that are all forms of communication. So whether a person is doing any one of these behaviors, remember, any behavior that a person has is an effort to communicate. And sometimes our people can't do that clearly, so we're going to have to watch for their baseline and try to figure out what's going on and ask as much as we can. But keep that face calm, keep your gestures friendly so that they will trust you and work with you. And we can't solve all behavior problems, but we can do a lot to redirect them. So I hope this has been helpful. Difficult behaviors are always difficult, and they're not really difficult behaviors. They're just a different way of communicating. So I hope this has been helpful. If you want to hear on more of our tapes, please go to Portland Community College, conniekratti activities, and that will lead you to more tapes that might help you be a better activity, better activity director, because that's what we all want to be, a better activity director. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.